Hello everyone, I'm Marvin, and today we're going to take a look at Ceremonial Ethno Psy Sample Pack by Fractal Sounds. First, I want to mention before we dive deeper into this video, if you're just stumbling across this video, you don't have much attention in front of you, you're kind of in a hurry, or for whatever reason, I'm going to put an index. It's going to be very thorough. You can jump from section and section. If you want to go straight to sound examples, you can do that. But I want this video to also act as a video user manual. So I'm going to take a lot of time. We're going to go through all the sections of the pack, and I'm going to give a lot of details. So don't hesitate to use the index. Now, a little context for the pack. The idea came as soon as with Swa Swally, we did shamanic voices preset pack for pigments. Basically what this is, if you don't know, is granular synthesis sourced from the vocal magic of Swa Swally. If you don't know this mystic individual, I've met him at a festival. I believe it's in 2016 or something. That's the first time I saw him perform, and I was blown away. I was like struggling to comprehend what I was witnessing, because he's a professional vocalist, professional percussionist, and it's just very unique. And there's I don't necessarily like to use the word magic, because it's sometimes it's thrown overboard a lot, like a magical term, no pun intended, but there's something, and I believe we call that talent. And over the years I realized that okay, we need to do something to bring a bit of this talent and a bit of that magic to producers. And the first iteration of it was with shamanic voices for pigments, and now we brought Ceremonial, which is a full sample pack. And yeah, the first time I realized when we were doing shamanic voices, I said we need to this could be a full-blown sample pack. And now here it is after almost like close to 2 years. Ceremonial, what this is, it's a deep dive into vocals and percussions brought by Swa Swally, and it's Ethno Psy, and there's both ends of the spectrum. There's some very organic material, and it also goes all the way to full-blown psychedelic. And there's also that aspect when it comes to processing. You have access to some very raw material and some very creatively mangled, glitched, processed samples. Obviously, the pack is out now at Fractal Sounds, and as always, there's an intro deal. And now, let the ceremony begin, and let's dive into Ceremonial Ethno Psy sample pack. Okay, the first thing I want to discuss is the pack structure. When you open the pack, it looks like this. There's 3 folders. Although FX is the one up top, it's not the biggest. The biggest ones are the vocals and the percussions. The effects is really cool, but you can see it as a complementary folder. It contains effects processed from the vocals elements and the percussion elements. We'll get to that when we're going to dive a bit deeper into that section. But so far, this is the pack structure. If we open vocals, for example, you will have different subtypes of vocals available. Same things for percussions. When we open it, you have all your subtypes of percussions. There's African percussions, congas and bongos, cymbals and shakers, melodic toms, and tablas. If we open a subfolder, African percussion, for example, you have these 3 levels of processing. Earth is closest to the raw samples or the raw material. That's why it's the earth. There's a bit of a shamanic theme inspired, obviously, in this pack. I had some fun with that. Next up is the Axis Mundi processing. It's higher for shamans. It's Axis Mundi is actually the sort of channel they use to travel in between worlds. So in the Axis Mundi folder, you can see that there's more processing. Earth is really, it's the closest to the raw material you'll have. There's mixing type processing, but there's no like creative processing like delay, gates, reverb, which you have in the Axis Mundi folder. And the Heather folder is it's actually full-on crazy processing, very psychedelic. So yeah, let's dive into this folder. I think the sounds will help you understand what I mean. But yeah, you have all these levels of processing. So depending what you want to go for, what you need, over the years, over the time of providing sample packs, I realized some producers really enjoy having a finished product, and other ones, they like to have the raw material for themselves and do their own processing. So both of these options are there. Let's start with the Earth folder. So if you open the folder, you have all these loops. They have number, they have the tempo information, and they have extra notes sometimes added. It's going to help you identify what the sample is a bit better. Let's listen to a couple of these. So that's the closest to the raw materials. Some have a bit of reverb, some are very purely raw. And then if we go to the Axis Mundi, we start to add some processing, some creative processing. And there's also more of these. You can see there's actually more than the double. It's because some of these have been resequenced and there's more rhythm, there's more loops created out of the raw material. So this is my favorite folder, like every Axis Mundi type processing, because you'll see that each of them, they have all these 3 levels of processing. But yeah, the Axis Mundi is my favorite. I like the other one. You'll see that it's just crazy. But I think this one is a pure good middle of everything. If you find yourself being in the Axis Mundi folder, you like a sample, but you're like, this delay or this reverb, it's cool, but not necessarily my type. Well, go back into the Earth folder and you'll probably have access to the raw material of this loop and you'll be able to do the processing that you like. Now, this is the other folder. I think I'll just leave the sample play for themselves. You'll understand what this is about. This is intense processing, but very creative, very psychedelic, and it's insane. You can see that this is some percussive trippy material. So this is going to be very useful for grids, stabs, percussive elements into anything from ethno prog to full-on psychedelic trance. Now I'm gonna zip back this African percussion folder. I am not going to go over all these other ones from the percussions because they are similar but different, but you can see they all have these subfolders and there's a lot. This could be an hour video if I go over all of these. I will let you discover them by yourself, but now you can kind of know what to expect with these folders and these levels of processing. This is the same thing, but instead these are congas and bongos. These are cymbals and shakers and so on. Now, the vocals subfolders. You have these 3 subfolders, and you guessed it, they have the same pattern for processing. For example, melodic voices. Let's go into the earth. There's one thing though that is different from the percussions, is that in the percussions, the earth, axis mundi, and ether are loops. They are all loops. In the vocals, axis mundi, ether, these are loops, but the earth one, they could be looped, but they are not necessarily meant to be a loop. They are more vocal phrases. For example, let's take this one, for example. It is at 130 BPM, so it means that if you play something at 130 BPM, it's going to sync very well. The other thing is, if you want to time stretch, now you have that information. That's usually very useful. But it doesn't necessarily loop all the way. You could play it in a looped fashion, but it's not a loop. I'll show you the difference with the percussion samples. So now the difference, if you take a look, this is a earth percussion loop, and you can see that it loops all the way. Even though I'm at 140 BPM, I could time stretch that at 130 BPM. That would loop also perfectly. So yeah, in this case, the vocals are even more raw material. So you can really resequence them how you like. That's why they are there in the pack. And if we go at the axis mundi, for example, this is the very same, that's number 7, B minor. But this one now is processed and loops perfectly. And for fun, let's add this congas and bongo loop. Yeah, so this is going somewhere, but I'll leave that for a stream. Usually what I do is a video overview, and then a couple days later, or closer to the release, I'm going to do a stream where I produce something out of the blue with all that material. But yeah, obviously they complement themselves. These 2 folders, the percussions and the vocals, they are complementary. They're meant to be like that. And they come from the same genius of Swa Swally. Now, still in the melodic voices, let's check the other folder of this subfolder. So much more psychedelic, much more abstract. Once again, these actually, I think they could be used as grid and stabs as always. And they have more of a vocal nature. So they are like psychedelic. Yes, they could be used as psychedelic leads. But if you like those type of leads that have a bit of vocal formanty behavior, this is going to be a really cool folder for you. Now, for the percussions, I skip all the other folders because, like I said, you could sort of deduct what's in there. For the vocals, though, I will showcase every subfolder because they are different. They are more different than the percussion ones. We checked out melodic voices. Now let's check out rhythmic tribal voices. This is some of the earth ones. Like you can see, this is very raw. That's also very useful if you want to get that, use that as a granular source or start fiddling with that. It's going to be easier because it's, once again, it's pretty raw. Now the Axis Mundi folder of the tribal voice. And this is the other folder of the rhythmic tribal voices. So this is a pure tribal vocal madness. Now, final subfolder of the vocals, throat voices. So this one similar to the rhythmic tribal voices, but these are much more throat oriented and usually they are sustained for a long time. Now the Axis Mundi processing version. And finally, the other versions of these. Now, before we go into the effects folder, I want to show you something, a little extra that you can do. It all depends of your level. If you're a beginner producer, these are great as is, drag and drop in your production. But if you're a bit more advanced and you want to play with a bit more than just dragging and dropping these samples, I'll show you something that you can do. So on the Fractal Sounds website, there's a pack called Shamanic Voices. It's been done with Swa Swally 2 years ago, approximately. Time flies. And it's been done in a very similar fashion that what I'm going to do. It's inside Pigments, but the idea and the concept is the same. And by the way, the material inside Ceremonial, it's all new material. It's similar technique with Shamanic Voices, but you know, it's total new recordings. Swa Swally sent some new material, so there's nothing recycled. You know, you're getting everything new. So if you're getting Shamanic Voices or you already have Shamanic Voices, Ceremonial just completely new material for you. But I'll show you the technique and you can use it with both the percussions and the vocals in this pack. First thing, open your favorite Granular engine. I'm gonna use Faceplant. Now drag one of your favorite material from the pack inside the Granular engine. So I brought this throat loop. Already very cool, glitchy, that kind of stuff. And I'm going to use an LFO. Gonna place that marker at the beginning. And I'm gonna assign the LFO so that the whole course of the LFO corresponds to everything that's in the sample. I just want to assign that to something mathematical. So 16 on 16 makes sense. You can see right now it's just sweeping through the sample. But now if I start to do some step sequencing, you're getting something that is a bit step robotic and glitchy. And now since you have access to tons of similarly processed vocal types, we can drag and drop other ones in there and see how our setup works. This could be a very good basis for a lead preset. And once again, one of the perks of having access to a more raw version of this, let's try it with just the raw throat material. This one sounds much more organic, so it's definitely closer to the ethno side of things than the psy side of things. So once again, you have access to that whole spectrum of processing. Okay, so we're gonna leave Faceplant and we're gonna visit that last folder. The effects folder is a complementary folder. It's a bit small, but it's still big. Lots of files in there, but it's meant to be complementary. It's some effects material made from the percussions and the vocals. And the way it's intended to be used is, let's say you're working on a track, you're using a lot of these elements, and the effects folder is sort of meant to be a binding element. You know, you can have these effects in your track, and since they are made from the vocals and the percussions, they're gonna fit. You know, they're gonna be a good binding element in your track. For example, if we go into percussion impacts, let's go into deep impact hits. So logically, if you're working on something that has already some, you know, freaking percussions in there, some bongos, some djembes, to have that sort of deep impact, it's gonna fit the aesthetic of your track as well. Another example, delayed hits. Let's go into earth percussion hits. Another type element is the reverse. This is going to be very good for transition material. For example, you can drag it in there. It's gonna introduce a section. Actually, I'm gonna bring an impact there as well. Yeah, that's really just a simple arrangement just to show you how these can be included. You know, they're really binding elements for your track. And what's cool is just the swap aspect of it. You know, that there's a really cool congas and bongo loop, but if you want to go for a more djembe or African type energy, we're just going to go there and get a percussion, African percussion, and swap what we have here. Yeah, so different energy, really cool and really easy to swap those elements to your taste. I went for a little fade at the end here, but this loops very well on itself, but I just felt like having that sort of phrasing where it's there and then it fades. I felt it was cool. Once again, I need to stop there because I'm sort of beginning a track here, so I'll end here. And finally, in the effects folder, in the vocals, very similar folder, impacts, reverse. There's some stretch as well. You're gonna see stretch it's somewhat of a very mangled, stretchy effect. Very trippy and psychedelic elements. There's some percussion stretch as well. One thing that there's not in the percussion folder is the drone folder. So there's some vocal drones here. And those are vocal pads made from voices of the pack, and it creates a shamanic soundscape. And that was the last folder I wanted to show in this overview. And now you understand how to navigate and use this pack. And that's it for this video. I'm really happy about the result of this pack. I'm really proud also. And in a world where AI is becoming more and more present in music productions, at least plugins, it's just becoming more and more there. It felt right to collaborate with another musician, and it was fun always. And fun is it's a big vector of creativity too. And that was a good reminder for me to work on this pack. So I'm happy to share it with a lot of producers. I hope this can be useful, and I hope that the Swa Swally genius will live on, and it can reach you and your music production. If you need some help learning electronic music production, sound design, mixing and mastering, if you want to learn how to make loops like this, make professional content, I have a mentorship program, and the link is in the description. There's some private lessons, group lessons, some free presets, some masterclass, a lot of content. And you can write to me on Instagram if you want to know more information. You can also go through the Fractal Sounds website, the Fractal Sounds Discord. All the links are in the description. And until then, I will see you in another video. Happy producing. Have fun with these samples.